This is the Cliff Yates Show. Personal growth, motivation, inspiration, and philosophies for a great life.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Cliff Yates Show. I'm so glad you're here. And of course, you are in the right place if you're out to get to the next level of being a better person and see how much better we can get and become. Not just get, but become. So in this episode, I'm talking about going from vegan to primal living and eating. What does that mean? And how do you do it? And why should we do it? So I did, and this is something I've been living, and this is going to be informal today. I'm going actually off of no notes. I'm going off the top of my head because I've been living this for the past 7 or 8 years. This started this journey that I'm on right now as far as healthful living, eating, a lifestyle, not a diet, because diets, we go on and off. Diets are really effective, right, for short-term losing weight, calorie restriction. That's how they work. But as far as something we can sustain, it's really hard to sustain when we're on something that everybody calls a diet. When, what's in the word diet? But die. So we don't want to die. We're trying to live. And so my journey began, I think, around 7 or 8 years ago when a couple of things were happening together. And I actually wrote a book called The Vegan Fountain of Youth, which is still out there. I'm going to have to rewrite that book now because now I'm transitioning to what I say in the title of Primal Living and Eating, because I got turned on to this new lifestyle through being exposed to Mark Sisson and his Primal Blueprint, which is a book that he wrote, and he also has a program. I'm also enrolled right now in the Primal Health Coach Institute. I'm going through the curriculum and learning every day how to better eat so that we are really reprogramming our genes to express themselves in a healthy way, because we may be, we're predisposed to certain things, good or bad, maybe diseases, obesity, diabetes, but we're not predetermined. Through lifestyle, we can definitely affect our genes. And so that's where I'm getting to today. But if we go back to how I got into the vegan thing, was I used to drink a lot of milk. And when I talk about a lot, I mean a lot of milk. But I thought I was doing the right thing because I went to a non-fat milk that I was eating. And so I thought, that's good. I'm cutting out the fat. That's healthy. And I'm still doing quite a bit of bodybuilding and weight training, resistance training, but through knowledge and gaining some education, I was also combining that with cardio health to both maintain strength and have a healthier heart and basically operating system in our body. So, but I thought I was doing good by getting protein through a lot of non-fat milk. So a friend of mine said, you really should watch this special on Netflix. It's called Forks Over Knives. And he says that really the milk is not good. Even the non-fat milk has casein in it, which is something that can, cause artery blocking. And that leads to heart disease, which of course is the number one killer of men and women in the U.S. Still today, men and women, number one killer, heart disease. So I thought, okay, I'll watch the show. And that show was very enlightening, and it had a big effect on me. It has 2 heart surgeons who basically came to the same, as they studied heart disease, they came to the same kind of conclusions, but with different studies and a different way of getting there. And so I think both of them had been at least one had been brought up on a dairy farm, so brought up heavily involved with milk and meat in their system. But one of the doctors, Dr. Esselstyn, he had a program for going completely vegan. And even he couldn't really get people on his trial unless they were in a life-threatening stage. So he would get people into his program. They were allowed to be in his program when basically they were told, you have 6 months to a year to live. And so they would allow then for him to put them on his program, which was very strict. but he got great results. And many of his people and patients were alive 5 years later, even though they were given a few months to live because of heart disease. And many of them went on to never having any further heart-related incidents, and so, or needed any more heart procedures. And so this, the evidence that they propose in this series, and I would suggest you take a look at it, because they found around the world places where heart disease is pretty much non-existent. And so through diet, both these heart surgeons were able to really come up with scientific proven methods through data and science, trust the science, that showed that if you really went to a more, well, vegan would be the ultimate, but definitely plant-based diet, you can not only stop whatever phase of heart disease you might be in, but you can actually reverse it. The one disease that's the number one killer in the United States, you could stop and or reverse with your diet alone. And so I got really excited about this. And at the same time, my dad had a heart attack, went into the hospital, and visiting him in the ICU and seeing him being intubated, seeing these other heart patients in the ICU, with tubes and hooked up and hoses, and, you just take that all in. You just take all the sights and the sounds, and you're picturing yourself in those positions, and you really become motivated, right? We're motivated by two things, right? For pleasure and to avoid pain. Well, you want to avoid this pain of being in this ICU. So I was really motivated with the knowledge of what I had just seen on this special, Forks Over Knives. And the title just means that instead of having surgery, you can actually turn yourself around as far as your heart disease through eating. Use your fork instead of the knife. Forks Over Knives, hence the title. And so I was excited about that. So with the combination of seeing my dad in this position and having seen how, even in this documentary, they go over how people get these stents, and doctors love to put stents in. Number one, they work, at least temporarily, but they do open up the arteries. So it's a medical procedure, but it has the effect of basically, it does not allow you to ever repair that portion of the artery where they put the stent in. It damages it forever. You need to always have that stent in there. And so while I'm in there visiting my dad in the ICU, people are coming in from our hometown. And our hometown is like 30 miles away from this hospital, but yet people are coming in, and they're getting more stents. They've already had a couple put in, and now they're going to have 2 more put in because they had further heart problems and heart incidents where they either had a heart attack or they had, problems breathing that were heart-related. And so I'm seeing all this, and the combination of seeing the show, seeing this, and thinking, wow, can I really stop any heart disease that I might have and prevent it in the future through a change in diet and or lifestyle? So I read a couple books, and I'm going to give this a chance. There's a way to tell if this actually works. So I just said, okay, 3 months. I had a blood test 3 to 4 months before I watched this documentary, before I saw my dad in this position, before I decided, okay, I'm going to give this a try. And so if I try this for 3 months, then I'm going to know the difference between, and then I get a blood test. I'm going to know the difference between the last blood test and this blood test and see if there's any dramatic results. And so I did 3 months and was very, very strict. And as a matter of fact, I got rid of all dairy as far as milk was concerned. And then I went to almond milk. And so I was still working out with the weights, exercise, doing cardio, playing a lot of tennis. And so I was still having my shakes, my healthful shakes. But I was using almond milk, with frozen berries, some ground flaxseed, some spinach, and then I had a pea protein, so a plant-based protein. And I stayed on that for 3 months, very strict, and I had high energy. So I was feeling really great. Not that I was feeling that bad before, but maybe slowing down a little bit. And so I did the 3 months, very strict, and then I had the blood test. And the results were pretty dramatic. So my cholesterol went from about a total of 220, 230 down to 170. So, I mean, that was a great reduction in total cholesterol and my triglycerides. So triglycerides, which are fat in the blood, went from about 170 down to 80. So almost 100-point drop in triglycerides, fat in the blood, and a definite increase in feeling energetic and vitality. And so I was dropping maybe too much weight at that time. Of course, I've always had a challenge with keeping weight on. So that's part of the negatives of that diet, is it's hard to maintain high enough calories to keep that weight on. But I was kind of bolstered by this blood test. So the only thing I wasn't happy with, and it continued until recently, what I wasn't happy, and we'll see what happens with the next blood test, but I wasn't happy. So all these markers went down. They would indicate, cleaning up of the arteries, good blood flow, good blood pressure, everything. So everything's good. But what did maintain quite a high, my glucose levels were still pretty high. They were, kind of edging into the pre-diabetic range, which this is what I didn't want to get into, because my dad had diabetes when he got diabetes when he was about 57, 58. So here I was at the time, I'm about 55. And so I'm getting to that pre-diabetic stage of glucose. I was about 100, 101. So I say 101, 100, 101, because I was 101. And then after I went strict with the vegan life, then I was still 100. Now, my doctor said, well, your A1C is still 5.7. That's still below 6. That's really good. So he said that was the most important number, so not to worry. So still no medication in any regard. And so feeling great. And then I came across another book that my mom turned me on to, which was called, and at the time I had taken so much information, I was thinking, what else can I learn about this stuff? I don't really need another book. But his book was called, this is Dr. Greger, and his book was called How Not to Die. So, okay, I'll read that book, Mom. Reluctantly, I start reading. I couldn't put it down. It was so fascinating because here was this doctor. When he was a kid, he remembers his grandmother. His grandmother was, she had gone into the hospital for a heart procedure, and this was not her first heart procedure, and they told her, and her family, they called the family in, they sent her home saying, listen, she needs to get her personal things in order because there's nothing more we can do. We cannot do another heart procedure to help her at this point because there's so much scar tissue on her heart. She won't survive the operation. So we suggest that she go home and get her personal affairs in order so basically they sent her home to die. And he remembers this. They sent Grandma home to die. Somehow Grandma, watching television, hears about the Pritikin Center in California, Southern California. And I remember the Pritikin Center. I remember driving by it on PCH there near Santa Monica, which was one of the main headquarters. And so this Dr. Greger's grandmother sees some commercial on TV about the Pritikin Center in California. She gets herself out to the Pritikin Center in California. She gets herself in the Pritikin Center, and she's in such bad shape. They wheel her in a wheelchair, and I forgot how much, I think it was 10 weeks later, she leaves the Pritikin Center walking 10 miles a day on a purely plant-based diet. Now, he didn't say vegan, but he did say plant-based. And so, and I've talked about that before, that it's more important to be plant-based and not all or nothing, and to put yourself in a more strict category that would be hard to sustain. And so she was walking at the time 10 miles a day at age 65, plant-based diet. She had been sent home to die. She went on to live 31 more years to age 96 based on this change in lifestyle. And so this is how much power we have over what we might be genetically predisposed to suffer from if we take control of our environment and the effect it has on our genes. And so Dr. Greger was inspired to become a doctor because of that. And he was so surprised when he went into medical school how there were he said he had one class on nutrition, but otherwise nobody had any education with nutrition. And they were the doctors. They were the most unhealthy people that he had ever been around. And so he has kind of led the way for a plant-based lifestyle. And still today he hosts a show called nutritionfacts.org, and you can still find him on YouTube. And he uses the Freedom of Information Act to find studies that are not funded by people who have an agenda. Obviously, if the dairy industry is funding a study, likely the results could be skewed. But Dr. Greger, he was really, it was really enlightening to read his book, How Not to Die. And so I continued following that vegan lifestyle. Now, in subsequent blood tests, I was always, and they tell you this if you go vegan, right? You're going to be deficient in vitamin D probably, and or a B complex, and I think maybe a vitamin E, so you have to take some supplements. So you're not getting everything you need. And so obviously I'm learning now, of course, if you get even 20 to 30 minutes of sunlight a couple days a week is going to give you more than 10,000 international units of vitamin D. It's even hard to get that much taking that with supplements every day. So getting some sunlight is really going to give you all the vitamin D you need. And unfortunately, because the message was skin cancer, even with myself suffering from some skin cancers, we get into the mode of no sunlight at all, which is it's going to be more negative than positive. It's better to have a limited amount of sunlight that we control every day. So, and then that'll lead to really prevention of most cancers by getting that vitamin D from the natural source. So, let's fast forward. So now my last blood test, let's say a year ago, the doctor said, well, you're low. Doctor says, you're low in omega-3s. You need omega-3s. You need your omega-3s up. And so he said you get that by fish. Salmon is the best source of omega-3s. I don't really like salmon, but you know what? I did miss fish. So then I added fish back into my diet. And, living in Florida now, you can get some great fresh fish all the time, anytime you want it. And so I added fish back in. And now I've added some beef back in once a week. And I'm not so strict on that. And I'm even going now more. And I'm going to talk about that when I get into the primal living and eating, which I become exposed to. So I went from the strictly vegan to now adding fish, need the omega-3s. You can get, you can buy fish oils, but fish oil supplements are unregulated. So you don't really know the quality of that fish oil you're getting and how good it is or from what source they got it from. And so the best way to get it is from a good, healthy fish source. So now I've added fish in, and now I've been recently exposed. I'm going to talk about more of this in the future, but I'm going to this. So I got turned, you get videos that are in your feed that says you might like this. And so I saw Mark Sisson on there. Here he is, 68 years old. This man was a competitive triathlete in his younger years. He went on to coach other triathletes. And basically, and he looked great. He was doing well in his competition, but in his body, he was suffering from arthritis. He had problems with his feet. He was in chronic pain in his joints. And so he even though he looked great, he was starting to become unable to compete anymore in what he loved competing in, triathlons. And so he knew he needed to change something. So he got onto this primal eating, kind of going back to the way our ancestors had to eat, because and our genetics are still programmed that way. And he went on to study life expectancy of the, people 10, 20, 30, 50,000 years ago compared to when civilization came and grains and sugars and chemically altered oils were brought into our diet, and this great onset of diabetes. And he has come up with this program, which is the Primal Blueprint. And so it all makes sense. And one of the reasons I have gone to this is because I noticed in my own vegan eating, since I was really, really relying on pastas, I got away from eggs and chickens and how they were being produced and the negativity there. And so I'm relying on my energy through carbohydrates, not knowing, of course, but not really conceiving how detrimental that is when we're always dumping too much carbohydrates into our system, which is creating a dump. It's being converted to glucose, causing the liver to dump a bunch of insulin into our system to counteract that spike in glucose, because our body will naturally try to survive immediately to what's going on. What do we have to do right now to survive? And to do that, they have to dump a bunch of insulin in our system to get that sugar level down so our body's in homeostasis. We're on an even level to survive right now. But in the long run, that continuous dumping of insulin into our system leads to our excess being stored as fat, which made sense as to why I was so lean in the vegetarian, vegan lifestyle, but yet I was carrying belly fat because I was dumping this glucose into my system. And when you can't put any more glucose in the cells, the liver says, okay, we have to store that as fat. And now your body, if it's in, and his whole system is really about getting your body to be mitochondrial flexible so that you can burning fat and ketones really. So his primal blueprint is really trying to get your body out of that. So when your body is in the mode of always knowing that there's going to be that glucose input from numerous meals, then it can get very efficient and lazy in just burning glucose. So now it stops burning fat. It stores fat for future energy, but it doesn't need it. So it relies on the fact that every couple hours you're dumping carbohydrate into your system, so it gets very good at burning carbohydrates only. So Mark Sisson's system is geared towards resetting our body to how our genes were set up to burn energy, which is really to become efficient at burning fat and ketones. Your liver will produce enough ketones in one day to give you energy to last a week. And so if you can get your body into producing ketones that your brain loves to thrive on, loves to burn ketones and fat, that's what it burns the most efficient. But if it's in the habit and is trained to burn carbohydrate, then it's going to get lazy and be in that mode. So once you reset your body into burning fat and ketones, then you will get rid of excess body fat because your body will burn that as energy, and your body will create ketones, which your brain loves to survive and thrive on instead of carbohydrates and sugars. And so once your body is used to burning fat and ketones, you can also then eat carbohydrates, and your body will also burn carbohydrates for energy too, without there being so much in your system that it gets overgrown. If your cell was a bathtub and you just put so much carbohydrates in there and then you burn that off, then it would never overflow. If you can picture it overflowing, and that's when your body takes that excess and says, okay, we would put that into the body as fat to burn later. So now that's kind of how the Primal Blueprint goes. But get Mark Sisson's book, The Primal Blueprint, and it makes sense to me. And then if you do that, you can actually get your body to go from. See, the problem was if you keep barraging your system with the carbohydrates, right, which are processed, if you get your body, if you're always pumping in those carbohydrates, which are getting converted to glucose, so that your liver has to dump a bunch of insulin into your system to counteract that spike in sugar and glucose, you're going to end up becoming insulin resistant, so that you no longer will insulin be effective in taking glucose out of your system and putting it into the cells for energy. And so, but with the Primal Blueprint, get your body burning fat and ketones, you can actually get your body to become insulin sensitive. You can start to become more insulin sensitive. And now when your body has to put insulin into your system, it's really efficient in taking glucose, putting it into the energy of your cells without being in such excess that you burn out your pancreas and you become diabetic, which is happening to a lot of us in our standard American diet. Now, there's a lot of study and things to learn in this, but the whole thing with the Primal Blueprint is this. You don't have to get hung up on measuring calories, measuring how much carbs you're getting, how much sugars you're getting and protein you're getting. If you can just focus on, and it's not all or nothing. Mark Sisson, frequently, he gets off the program. He's traveling, he's at an event, he's at a wedding, and he'll have a cake, a sugar-ridden cake, but he'll have a piece or half a piece. And the next day he's back on his program. He doesn't get off kilter so much that, okay, I'm off the program now, I might as well have 5 cakes. And so you can be flexible in your eating, but you're actually under his blueprint. You are looking for, our body and genetics, our genes are set up to get energy from a various assortment of foods the way our ancestors had to get it, because they didn't actually know when they might be getting these nutrients. So if you can focus on getting your food, benefits and energy from milk, this is how you want to be focusing on your food intake: from meat, fish, fowl, eggs, vegetables, seeds, nuts, and organic oils, healthy oils, extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil. I'm also coconut oil, but not these chemically altered vegetable oils. We want to stay away from those poisons. And if we can focus on those food groups, getting it from meat, fish, fowl, eggs, vegetables, seeds, nuts, healthy oils, we have such diverse choices in nutrient-dense, delicious foods that you're never going to feel like you're restricting yourself in any way. And those kind of things lead to influencing our genes to express themselves in a healthy way. And so that's the study I'm in right now. I'm enrolled in the Primal Health Coach Institute. You can see what I'm learning, and I'm sharing it with you. And so we're going to see, I'm going to be due for a blood test here in about 2 months, and I'm going to see the results that I'm getting. Now, let's see if there's a drop in my glucose and A1C, and if this primal eating is working the way it should work, and tapping in on how our ancestors were living, then I'll know by the blood work, won't I? And so that's where we're at today. I hope this helps in some way. But either way, whatever you decide to do for your health, to try to make that change, if you want to make a transformation, do it in increments, small increments. Don't get overwhelmed with a major change. Start making that turn very slowly, and it's something that you can sustain. So I'm going to be following up with this as I go through the Primal Health Coach Institute, and I learn more and more about the primal blueprint. Mark Sisson in his Primal Health Coaching, he really has 10 rules in the primal blueprint. And if you follow these 10 simple rules, it's really going to lead to a healthy, long life, or at least going to give you the best chance for a healthy, long life. And those 10 rules are: eat plants and animals. So we kind of went into that and how you can do that. I'm just going to brush over these 10 real quick. And later on in other episodes, I'm going to go a little bit deeper. But right now, let's go through the 10 laws that he espouses for longevity and living a healthy, vital life full of energy. Eat plants and animals. 2, stay away from poisons. Poisons like, he would say, sugars, grains, and chemically altered oils. We want to stay away from those things. 3, move frequently. Don't have a workout session, then go back to the couch. Try to move throughout the whole day. Move frequently. Once in a while, lift heavy things. Maybe a couple times a week, you do brief, real heavy weight exercises without risking injury. Lift heavy things. 4, 5, sprint every once in a while. Short sprints, 20 to 30 seconds. Maybe two times a week, I think is what he prescribes. Twice a week, we sprint every once in a while. 6, get plenty of sleep. Pay attention to your sleep patterns and what you can do to get better sleep. All right. 7, play. Play. Not just compete. If you're into competition like I am, I love playing tennis, I love competing, but how about playing? Do other things. Play golf with friends, socialize without keeping score. Play, which is involving movement, and you're doing it not for an intentional health, but just for the fun of it. Right? 7. So, we got 6, get plenty of sleep. 7 really was get sunlight. So 7 we'll say was play. 8 we're going to say is get plenty of sunlight. We talked about the sunlight and how important that is for your vitamin D hit. All right. 9, don't do stupid things. Don't do things that are going to put your life in danger. So don't get mindless on things that could cause us to be injured and or lose our lives. Texting and driving, sending a quick message on our phone while we're driving. These are things that are dangerous. These are stupid things we don't want to do. It can cause us grave injury or death. We don't want to do those things. Number 10 is expand our brain. Learn new things. Constantly do things. Crossword puzzles. Read books. Learn a language. Learn to play an instrument. Do something new and unusual by exercising that brain. So, I hope this helps. Listen, that's the end of this episode, going from vegan to primal living and eating. And more to come on this. Hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're watching and or listening on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell because you'll be notified when the next video comes out. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, please subscribe to the show because it tells the computer, hey, people are interacting with the show. Leave a comment because that really tells the computer people are interacting with the show, and they'll show it to more people who like these kinds of things. All right, everybody, that's the Cliff Yates Show. See you in the next episode.